Hi, I'm Elise, and I'm a tarot storyteller. Here on this channel, Tello Tarot, you're the main character, and every reading is a world you step into full of archetypes, shadows, desire, and transformation. If you want a tarot reading that feels cinematic and personal, or you're just tired of the same old tarot readings that you find on YouTube, then I think this is going to be the channel for you. Yes, I'll do simple, how are they feeling about you card readings from time to time, stuff like that, but I like to do things that are just random that I come up with on the dime. So for the title of this reading, as you can see, is The War You Fight in the Spirit Realm. Before you jump to the pile selection, please just hold on for a minute because I want you to help me set the vibe, okay? So outside of our perception lies the spirit realm, a place layered over our own reality where physical and non-physical beings move in ways our world could never even contain. Some dimensions mirror us, others would bend the actual human mind and break it. But your higher self exists in a realm that looks deceptively similar to ours at times. A world outside of time where ancient beings walk freely and the lines between magic and memory blurs. Across eons, this realm has endured countless battles between light and dark. Your higher self has witnessed plenty of them. I don't know, maybe they have been a part of some of them, but for now in this reading, they're no longer going to watch from the sidelines, okay? They're on the front lines of a spiritual war, one that they are determined to win. So in this reading today, we are going to explore that story, which hopefully that sounds fun. So I've created 3 piles. Each pile reveals your higher self's war through 4 simple spreads, okay? We got who is your higher self fighting against, obviously. What is their role in the armed forces against that adversary? I mean, are they like an officer? Are they in charge? Are they on the front lines? Like who and what are they doing, right? Or just who are they and what are they doing? Again, how your higher self is going to fight for that 3rd spread. And then for the 4th and final one, we're going to see how it affects you at the time that you view this reading, because it wouldn't be a tarot reading without some personal development involved, right? So yeah, let's go ahead. All right, pile 1, I have your cards right here to the side. Let's begin. Just to summarize here real quick. Your higher self isn't fighting something simple. This isn't a trickster, a restless spirit, or a minor shadow. What you're up against is ancient, corruptive, and powerful enough to challenge the very balance of the realm itself. So let's look at who or what your higher self is fighting and why that enemy is so dangerous. So your higher self is engaged in a battle against a force or entity that claims false divinity. With the added card reversed, this force has no morality or integrity, and it seeks to corrupt others to be the same. You could really think of just like your stereotypical darkness, right? With the Mystic card reversed, it claims a false connection to a higher power, higher consciousness, or an elevated state of being. And with the Child Nature card, it reveals a much darker, more harmful, violent side as well. It can and will harm beings that cannot defend themselves, especially those who depend on the nurturing and care of others. With the 4 of Pentacles and the Hermit reversed, this is your textbook villain who has been isolated and cast out of the Garden of Eden. So you say, I'm gonna say that this pile does kind of have like a biblical kind of feel to it, but you don't have to take it that way. This actually may represent like the literal devil, or at least a high-ranking demon for some of you regarding what you're fighting. So, but please keep in mind that in like a reading like this, who you are fighting really depends on your beliefs. Like reality is multifaceted, and I genuinely believe that if you can conceive of something, it exists somewhere. So if you believe that this is the biblical devil, then so be it. But this being or force exists far outside of the realm of light and goodness, and it's in a state of isolation as well. It's the place it's filled with decay, ego, and shadow, and the cards show that it may even dwell within a deep cavernous space. That's what I got intuitively. Perhaps like a hellish tunnel system that will like drain a spirit. Like the longer it remains inside, it will corrupt it more and more. But I believe this entity is an almost equal match to the forces of light as well. So that's more so reflected in the roommate diplomat card, as you can see with like the cookie and the halves. But from my understanding of metaphysics, creation as a whole is composed of approximately like 51%. I mean, it doesn't have to be approximate, but say it's 51% positive, 49% negative. contrary to the common belief that the forces of good overwhelmingly outweigh the forces of darkness. To quote a familiar idea, you can't have light without dark, right? So darkness provides the contrast needed to recognize and understand what is good and vice versa. So my interpretation of this energy is that this entity may represent the darker aspect or shadow nature of the divine. And you, alongside other beings, have taken on the responsibility of ensuring that this force does not tip the scales and plunge creation into more darkness. So let's move on to the next spread. What is your station or rank within the armed forces against this adversary? You guys are a military historian in this ongoing battle, a literal scribe. Your main role is to document, research, and preserve as much information as possible. And before you get bored of that, I want to let you know, like, this actually develops into something really cool. Your higher self recovers artifacts, weapons, and tools used by the adversary in any realm the battle touches, and studies them to develop better strategies. They gather personal accounts from others to document how the enemy they gather personal accounts from others to document how the enemy works, influences, and schemes, ensuring the forces of light can adapt and ultimately prevail. It appears that your higher self's greatest source of knowledge, though, is their own personal experience with the enemy. When they first joined the fight, they were likely trained or mentored by an older, wiser, possibly even an angelic person or like an angel. And this being may have once worked within the Akashic records. Your higher self could have been personally guided, taught, and prepared for this particular role. But at some point, your higher self actually had an encounter with this entity directly. And I'm saying the entity that they are at war against. They may have been spiritually harmed in battle, left mentally wounded, embittered, or deeply changed. And here you can see with the spread with the Five of Wands, there are indications that they may have even been captured and held within the enemy's realm of darkness and abuse. Your higher self may have been an actual POW, a prisoner of war. Now, though, they're a historian at the time of you reading this or viewing this reading. Yeah, now they're an historian at the time of you viewing this reading. They're a scribe who has become the elder, the teacher, the one who guides the younger generation of spirits who are preparing to wander the realms or even join the battle. They teach what's at stake and how one can be harmed if they are not careful. They warn new recruits and inexperienced spirits of the truth of this adversary. They show them that this thing will manipulate, it will oppress, and it's cold, and that under its influence, one is slowly corrupted, but only after they've been separated from the radiant, nourishing light of the divine. For some of your higher selves, there is a current discontent, though, with the role. Some of you may have been pulled away from the front lines in order to heal from past wounds. Being a prisoner of war is no joke, whether it's on Earth or elsewhere. War is like, it takes a toll on the body. And the experience that this higher self has had has changed them in profound ways. With the Four of Cups, it resembles the image of a veteran to me, like returning home, like able to like see the peace and beauty they fought for being enjoyed by others, yet they're unable to return to who they once were. You know, your higher self carries a shadow with them, and their innocence has been lost for sure. But what does it look like when your higher self fights this enemy? So the actual combat for your higher self is not hand to hand, and it doesn't rely on spiritual weapons. The battle is mental, and it centers around their scribal abilities as well. On a physical or symbolic level, your higher self uses their lived experiences and the knowledge they've collected to expose the enemy. This adversary has found ways to access the knowledge held by the forces of light, and it attempts to distort that truth to gain the upper hand. But as a historian, a scribe, and a record keeper, your higher self fights through word, logic, documentation, and truth. They are, in a sense, a journalist of the spiritual realm. Your higher self is also fighting through the analysis and application of data gathered by many others, strategizing not only how to win the war, but how to repair and restore what has been corrupted or destroyed. Their battle looks like research, application, adaptation, and it's all guided by emotional mastery as well. Even when the darkness seems to gain ground or overwhelm the light, your higher self continues to fight as a truth teller, a writer, and a scholar, someone the enemy can't silence. That's really important when it comes to fighting war, so shout out to the journalist, feel me? But how does this war affect you during this lifetime? With this energy, I believe this ongoing battle trickles down and shows up in your lived experience. There may be times when you feel depressed, withdrawn, or there are moments where you isolate yourself, especially from your family. You may find yourself losing faith in empathy or charity, doubting whether the world will ever shift into a better age. Apathy can sneak upon you, especially during periods of instability. Maybe your family has never been able to support you when you needed them the most, or perhaps stability is your highest priority, and when it feels shaky, you take it personally and retreat. The Hermit card in this deck carries like a deeply heavy tone, and the energy here suggests someone who has experienced significant depression and isolation throughout their life. This happens because your higher self is still clearing away the remnants of darkness that once held them captive long ago. I kind of imagine it as like they have a limb that's been poisoned and it's just staying that way. But the guidance here is to integrate more shadow work into your life, especially if you're someone who experiences mental health struggles, both on the physical plane and in the subtle spiritual realms. I sense that your higher self sometimes returns to visit those who didn't escape the darkness or those who were completely overtaken by it. Maybe at the edge of that realm just wandering, right? They may still see these beings as family and they may not want to let them go and call it survivor's guilt or CPTSD or PTSD, whatever your language for it is. The emotional imprint is still the same. There are parts of you that need to be revisited, understood, and transformed so you don't unconsciously return to your own pain in the same way, whether this looks like revisiting people or old habits tied to old addictions or mentally replaying traumatic memories that pull your body back into fight or flight. Because the body keeps score, right? You're being asked to shift how you interact with your pain and your inner shadows. You're not meant to ignore your demons nor to become them. You're meant to understand them and then transmute them. So that's what I got for you, pile one. This was supposed to be a really quick reading as my first reading. I just really appreciate you stopping by my channel, and you can expect some more cool readings like this if you dig it. So see you later. Bye. To your reading, your energy comes in sharp, focused, and a little no nonsense. This pile isn't dealing with a classic enemy. What you're facing is something that disrupts the balance of a realm built on clarity, empowerment, and light. So let's take a look at who or what your higher self is up against and why their role in this war is so important. So to jump off, we're asking who or what this entity or energy or force is that stands as the opposition in this war. Who is the enemy? Who are you fighting against? Now, some of you may have come from pile one because I did fumble while shuffling your cards and got distracted, so I had to redraw twice, but similar energies from that pile kept popping up. However, in this pile, they were kind of, in pile one, they were kind of a POW in an active war. You guys are actually giving cop vibes already, but of course we have to dig deeper. So to answer the question of who your higher self is facing off against, I don't believe you're necessarily fighting a war. Just like from the first spread, the energy I was receiving at first is one where your higher self at the time you are viewing this, even though time is non-existent where they are, your higher self lives in or occupies a region in the spirit realm where personal empowerment, clear-mindedness, and intuition thrive. The culture there is built around being able to manifest high vibrational realities and experiences. It feels like it thrives within light, creativity, the power of will, and self-mastery. And whatever or whoever can't maintain that state of being is not necessarily an enemy of the state, but some of y'all's higher selves might treat them like that because you come running up like the feds. I gotta be honest. What your higher self is at war against are lower vibrational states of consciousness and energies that would tip things out of balance, similar to pile one. So if pile one's enemy corrupted things into darkness, your higher self's enemies right now are people and energies or entities that can't or won't see the truth of their own sovereignty, which makes them more susceptible to darkness. It feels like this corner of the spirit realm wants to keep things lighthearted and playful and under the light of source energy, and they do not tolerate energies that drain, feel sorry for themselves, or refuse to see their own power. Intuitively, with the first spread, this feels like a spirit city where everyone is super happy, thriving, and I'm not saying toxic positivity, but they're in a community. And then when you look at the outskirts or the slums of this region, it's full of beings who in our reality would be the people who beg for advice but clearly love their problems more because they stay wallowing and shooting everything down. They're just negative. And it's possible that one entity who embodies the King of Wands archetype in the spread the most, hell, it could even be the king or the leader of this region, because you have to understand that reality outside this one can take on forms without limitation. This person could be spearheading that kind of like task force that you're part of to keep the city's vibration high and help rehabilitate those who genuinely want help. To move on to spread number 2, what's your rank or station in these armed forces or this task force? Because I really feel like it's a task force. Regarding your rank, I think this pile is a leader, a general, or a master strategist. Whatever battalion, unit, or armed force exists on this side of the fight, I think your higher self is an infiltrator in a way. With the Prince and Mediator cards, for some of you, your higher selves are sneaky. They'll infiltrate the lives and communities of lower vibrational citizens or wanderers at the edge of the city trying to get in, and they pretend to share the same frequency. They may act like they've like given up on existence or on themselves to feign like a disempowered state. And when the target's guard is down, they negotiate rehabilitation and realignment. Again, it's giving you're the feds. I think you're the feds. They may even tempt these beings in order to pull them towards the light. And yeah, for some of you, this is almost like a holy war, like a jihad, a crusade, where your higher selves are determined to cleanse the realm of its scourge and like do so in the name of light. Based on the previous energy of what you're fighting against, I think some of your higher selves are analysts as well. They know what patterns to look for, what works for certain cases and what doesn't. Now, some of you may think of your higher selves as like the love and light Gestapo, you could say that, and maybe that's true for like a few of you, but I really think your higher selves are simply true to their convictions. I get the sense that there is a consensus in their corner of the spirit realm that things are not spiritually complete and whole. Like there's this idea that there's a cycle that's unfinished, and it could be a cycle where the occupants of that realm once had real spiritual afflictions and they existed in ego and lack. Now the realm is choosing to empower itself and live in full fulfillment, and everyone's being urged to get on board or like let the train station leave. But if they can't experience the full manifestation of that high vibrational reality. So unfortunately, some people are just stubborn, and I think again your higher self is like locked into their convictions, and they're just like either get on board or don't. But let's see like with the third spread what it's like when your higher self fights. So your higher self is part of the unit, battalion, or task force that goes to the deep outskirts that light has yet to conquer and looks for entities or people to convert. With the Five of Pentacles, you can look like, or this can look like pockets of like pure darkness, decayed and rotted cities where creatures of the dark, demonic spirits, shadow people, lost souls, wanderers, right? This is where your higher self has only like their light to guide them and illuminate those who are just close enough in frequency to perceive them. With just enough open-mindedness and belief. So like one or two things can happen in these campaigns your higher self goes on. So they can find a lost soul, one that trusts them enough, who feels like their arguments and inspiration is enough to take their hand, like, you know, it's like they, you know, convince them enough. Your higher self acts as like the guiding light to lead them out of the darkness without judgment, as you can see with like the Lover's card. They lead them safely back to the city of light, let's call it that, where they can be taught that they're enough, like that creation loves them, like there's so much more that they're deserving of, like they don't have to be in the darkness or low vibrational, right? And one thing to add to this is that some of your higher selves gives the beings like more freedom of choice every step of the way. because free will is a part of the situation entirely, but some of y'all, again, loving like Gestapo, your higher self knows they need to work on it too, but your higher self tends to manipulate and use a little bit of force. But the second situation is that this entity or soul your higher self targets for rehabilitation is not on board. So the being is like kind of screwing with your higher self and is much more comfortable in their discomfort. And in these cases, it could physically look like 2 points of like light, like 1 point of light, 1 point of darkness, like kind of shooting and flying around each other to strike one another in like a high velocity collision, and it neutralizes like their energy, and it's really hostile, and your higher self can at times walk away like actually wounded, spiritually wounded. What I've noticed in this part of your reading though is that angel wings have appeared several times in the cards, even in like the image that you chose for this pile. So you guys may have been called like earth angels, like you might be considered earth angels, and your higher self could even be on track in their evolution to become an angel further down the line because of this work, regardless of whether or not they use force or because they like, you know, progress isn't linear, and your higher self is working on like the little shortcoming of like manipulation they might use. So how does this actually affect your current reality at the time of viewing this? Because this is a timeless message. So I think you're feeling like you're at the end of a major painful chapter in your life or cycle. I get that for some of you, as if like one day you woke up and you were energetically like a different person. You could have felt lighter. You could have walked away from someone you cared about who just drains the hell out of you. Some of you literally have or are gearing up to literally like cull a past version of yourself or a bad habit. You could have actually had a funeral for your past self or inner child, you know, if you're into dramatics. But it kind of reminds me of like Lana Del Rey's story, if I have this correct. Like, I don't know much about her, but I enjoy like a few of her songs. But I saw her fans discussing on TikTok that she struggled with alcoholism and she had like a dark past, and she culled that old self or version of herself to become the Lana Del Rey she is today. Don't quote me on that, but some of you in this group could really like her as an artist. And another that comes to mind is Deutsche. Like, after dealing with severe mental health issues and bullying and aggression from other people in her youth, she decided to just like destroy that old version of herself and take on the personality that is who she is today, as an artist and a woman. So shout out to the Deutsche fans or Deutsche fans. But to get back on topic, you guys could have waited a long time for your life to find peace. And it's likely that peace came when you shed old skin that was holding you back from your power, or just like this happened when you just finally took action. And now you're determined to live a balanced life, a peaceful life, like a fulfilled one where you wield the sword. And at the time you're viewing this, it's finally settling in that your inner light is enough to cut through obstacles. Your mind is clearer. You don't doubt yourself as much, and you aren't as susceptible to like the pity mindset or limiting beliefs. But some of you are still struggling with the fact that you're no longer aligned with certain relationships, which is tough because we all go through it and deal with it. I like the advice here for your higher self has like that, or that your higher self has for you in this reading, is to understand that what doesn't fulfill you is not meant to be in your orbit. It's that simple. Like, it's simple math. And there are still parts of your new chapter that haven't come into reality because you're still holding on to the past. Heartbreaks, toxic relationships, and just allowing yourself to entertain what doesn't make you whole. And as a citizen of a spiritual region where happiness is their birthright, your higher self isn't going to tolerate that behavior much longer. So keep yourself like doing what you're doing, like keep cutting the cords. So that's what I have for you, my Warrior Pile 2s. This was supposed to be really quick reading, and I'm sorry if I spoke really fast, but I feel like your higher self really wanted you to know this information. Maybe they're hoping that your awareness of their activity will allow you both to align further for better energetic like frequency or potency. It's like they want their light to shine brighter on both sides of the veil, if that makes sense. So that's what I got for you, Pile 2. I'm so sorry that was like super quick, but I intended for this to be a really quick reading. Please visit me again on this channel, just testing the waters and seeing how people like these videos. So bye. Pile 3, your pile is my favorite pile for this reading. Real quick though, one, we have a few visitors from pile 1, I suspect. Welcome back. And 2, your pile reminds me of a movie. So take a guess in the comments, and if you get it right, you'll get an honorary shout out in the next reading I publish. But I mean, this is probably the first reading I published, so I doubt there's gonna be comments. But anyway, just a heads up though, this is gonna be a fast reading, but it is timeless, all right? So let's go ahead and jump in to the spirit wars that your higher self is fighting, or the spirit war. First spread is, who is your higher self fighting against, okay? This is something elusive, an entity that presents itself as having spiritual power, esoteric knowledge, and magic. But beneath the surface, its intention is to trap the unsuspecting souls. This is an old and powerful being that looks like a trustworthy high priestess, but once she it doesn't have to have a specific gender, but once she has you in her claws, she uses you for her own gain. I'm getting the sense that the wayward souls who are lost in realms like purgatory or the earth plane after people pass away are like lured to this entity because they no longer believe in a higher power or salvation, or they're really just confused and they don't know what to do or who to trust. They're spiritually hungry, they're destitute, and have forgotten their origin or where they came from. And this being pretends to have the answers or the key to escape, the knowledge of the spirit realms to help them, you know, navigate. And her false intentions appear as nourishment for their hungry souls. And once they accept her invitation, she traps them indefinitely to feed off of them. It reminds me of the scene in Narnia when Edmund, I think that's his name, like Edmund falls for the witch's scheme by eating the Turkish delight and believing she's the good queen of Narnia. And for this reading, the souls this entity preys on ends up prisoners that she again feeds off of. She also toys and manipulates them under the illusion of escape, only to be like for them to be put through emotional and spiritual like trials for her own consumption. This is like an energy harvester, something like you don't want to get trapped within, you know? This thing is a collector of souls. It's a torturer who appears as a genuine guide for the lost. My assumption is that many of these souls are young in spirit, beings that have crossed over from the physical world back into the spiritual realms. People who maybe had like a traumatic death or something like that, and they just like forgot who they are, because like some people, they die and they end up like wandering, you know, they really do. So what is your rank or station in the armed forces against this like evil high priestess energy? So your higher self is a wise teacher who is spiritually powerful enough to like cut through some of the barriers this entity has like cocooned around its victims. Like imagine these lost souls are like starving, depressed, like they are cocooned in these like, you know, nasty little cells, right? Like they could be in like pockets of darkness or like in these nasty little cages that are like have energetic or like spiritual barriers that they aren't powerful enough or don't have the knowledge enough to like escape, right? They don't. And at the same time too, it's like you have to consider like these people, if they're easily trapped, then they easily have forgotten about their free will. So they don't know how to escape. They're stuck. But like I said, your higher self is powerful enough to cut through these barriers, whether they're energetic or physical. And when they cut through, they communicate with that soul that's stuck to show them like the exit point. For some, this is like, you could consider it like a portal. It's like they could just like slice through reality, and the true, like they just like your higher self knows like the true realms of like spirit. Like they know metaphysics in a way. The main rule that they know is that like that which has dominion over you can only do so much with your permission. So again, they like are coming to talk to these people, kind of like pop in and be like, hey, you don't have to be here. They literally show up and they're just like, hey, like you don't have to do this. You don't have to listen to this entity. They don't have any real power over you. You could have escaped this whole time just by like walking away. They show these souls that fear and the oppressor's like illusions are the only things that are keeping them prisoner. Some of these souls though, like they have like Stockholm syndrome, and they resist like standing up for themselves because this entity first appeared as an angelic force, an angelic being, like showing them just enough love or understanding to like ensnare their naive soul. it's possible that for some of you, your higher self was actually like once a victim of this entity and escaped, which is why I shouted out pile 1, because pile 1 has also, their energy also dealt with being a victim of what they're fighting in the past. But now your higher self is helping others like as a survivor. So what does it look like physically when your higher self actually like fights this thing? So pile 3, like this part made me like sit up a little bit and actually like grab my attention when I was like doing your reading. So whether or not your soul was victimized by this entity or by others like it, your higher self has like a deep hatred for this thing. Like, and that hatred is nuanced. Like, we're talking about like the spirit realm, like, but the dimension your higher self operates in still allows like some ego. So that's why I'm thinking like earth plane kind of, you know. This isn't like an ascended master energy. This is just like righteous fury. Your higher self wants to take this thing, like, it wants to take this thing the fuck out. Like, they're not playing. They hate this thing so much. And with the 3 of Swords, your higher self like would be totally fine if this entity could be like eliminated entirely. Like, it literally gave me intuitive like visions of like your higher self like being like fantasizing, like having violent fantasies about this thing. But like the disdain is strong, like especially for how like phony and deceptive it is, like constantly, like this thing changes shape to like appear harmless. Like your higher self hates that thing. And maybe you hate fake people in real life, but this thing could really be like a powerful demon. But instead of like going in guns blazing to fight this thing, like your higher self is actually required to work with a team of other spirits using a much softer approach. Or maybe even more passive, and your higher self wants to like gut it. Like your higher self is like, no, like we need a different tactic. Like, again, I want to go in like guns blazing, and they're not having it. They're being definitely like limited. So the tactic right now that they're having to use is infiltration, like reconnaissance, and saving like one soul at a time. And your higher self is not satisfied with this approach because like they are happy to help, but they want to do it their way. It's giving like Aries energy, I don't know. But with the 3 of Pentacles, it's like your higher self gets briefed, steps through the doorway to a victim that's trapped within the false like reality that this entity has them in, and the goal is to like talk, like plant a seed, like offer a hand. And your higher self has to be reminded repeatedly that this is the safest way, instead of like just charging in like full speed ahead, because it's possible like some really major harm could be done, but your higher self just like doesn't want to accept that. So they still like, they complain, like your higher self complains, and they feel like everyone else is like kind of lacking the urgency that they have. Like they feel like they're fighting a forest fire with like a tiny bucket of water. Card. So how does this war like affect you in your reality by the time that you're viewing this? Some of you could be in Aries, like I'm saying. Like I get the sense that when you come to this reading, you're forcing your way through your obstacles, and I'm an Aries rising, so like you're tired of losing, you're tired of others like folding and yielding or trading their backbone for fake peace and comfort. Like you may have experienced a string of unfortunate events, but you haven't let it break you. You know, you still have ambitions. You're determined to reach like your goals no matter what. It's very Aries coded, very. However, like your higher self, you don't feel like your talent and effort has been like wasted. Your higher self feels like their talent and effort is being wasted or not applied correctly. You don't feel that way. Some of you have a strong some of you have strong political opinions, and you feel frustrated with like the current state of the world. Like look at the United States government, you know. You feel like, you know, maybe you feel frustrated with like maybe your taxpayer money being wasted, pushing, you know, there's terrible policy, or leaders are refusing to protect the people they represent, right? Like where pile 1's higher self's trauma trickled down into their life as depression, like yours trickles down into frustration, urgency, conviction, and anger at stagnation. For many of you, this shows up in your relationship to money. You want abundance, you like deserve it, right? Like, but it feels like the universe keeps spinning the wheel out of your favor. For this reading, like your advice from an Aries rising to another Aries, if you are an Aries, put it in the comments. Your inability to accept that there are multiple paths to your goal is what's holding you back. And I know that's really tough to hear because it's annoying. And again, Aries to Aries, or just an Aries person speaking here, it's annoying to hear that. But the instability, lack of support, and delayed success, like, may stem from that stubbornness. Like, your higher self, you may have wanted to do everything yourself in your way, eliminating the possibility that a team of like-minded supporters, each with their own gifts and talents, is exactly what will help you build the banquet table you're destined to feast at. So the advice here overall is to consider a more collaborative approach to your goals. Allow other people to at least like plant seeds in your mind. You know, you and your higher self are kind of one and the same. Some people's higher selves have a slightly different personality, which doesn't mean that there's something wrong with that. Again, reality and creation is multifaceted, but for you guys, I think Spirit really wants you to understand, like, there's a reason why there's strength in numbers, and you might have been going at things alone, and it's probably a good idea to kind of just like reconsider just having one friend with you, or taking the advice and opinion of other people. And you don't have to take their advice, but just give them a chance. So yeah, that's what I got for you, pile 3. Thank you so much, and yeah, I hope to see you more on this channel. Bye.